To illustrate just exactly how far down the Sherman rabbit hole I've gone, this is just a small sample of the tanks I happen to have on the shelf in my garage. Stay tuned for Cabana Boy. The original Tamiya Shermans came out in 1974, and they were based on tanks that were available in Japan. The Sherman in the very back is actually my first tank. That is a Tamiya Sherman modified into an Easy 8 with the T23 turret. That kit was purchased in 2005 and has been upgraded, maintained, and modified over the years. It's afternoon here in the DAC workshop, and it's an interesting time because I'm actually on vacation. Just out here looking to go to the lake, and there's a duck fight. The dreaded yellow peril. Well, I'm out with the spouse doing some exploring. Here we are near the old Lost Dutchman mine, Superstition Mountains. We're headed up to Canyon Lake. Made it to the lake. No parking as usual, but it's fun. Yeah, this March it may actually hit 100 earlier than it ever has on record here in Phoenix. So we may be here a lot. You're a desert dog. Oh, look, there's the boat we went on last year. We took that boat last year for her birthday. Well, here we are, Tortilla Flat. As you see, it's very busy. So I'm just gonna turn around. It's spring break, and am I going anywhere? And the answer is usually no, because I have an Irish step dancer. As a child, and that means we will be doing Irish step dancing for the green season, as St. Patty's is referred to, pretty much from now until St. Patty's Day. Historically, this is a big month. This is actually the anniversary of DAC as a club, because it was founded April 4th, 2006, after the appearance at TamiyaCon that I went to with a cohort, my friend Craig Pierce. The club, known as SCAT, Southern California Area Tankers, was enlisted to come in and provide the TamiyaCon with a battlefield, and they came in, spent 2 days digging and making their setup in the side, and it was very impressive. It was essentially a little French village with mountains and streams and buildings, factories, trees, and of course Tamiya tanks. Now, we've learned over the years that the Tamiya 1/16 scale tanks were basically a product of Mr. Tamiya. It was his side hustle, his favorite thing was the military vehicles, and the 16 scale, the larger ones, was sort of a pet project. The first one of note is the Sherman that came out in the 74. After that, you had the Leopard in the early 80s, the Gepard, followed eventually by a King Tiger, I think it was. And then in 2000-ish, the Sherman was redone with what they called the full option electronics, and then the Tiger followed along, Tiger 1. So those two kits came out, and they were the backbone. And that's why a lot of the early Tamiya RC full option parts work specifically for those two tanks. Now, what does this have to do with my little conversation here? My first tank came about because I went to TamiyaCon in 05 to visit my sister who lived in Long Beach. It wasn't too far away, so I went down there, spent 2 days, and the first day I actually managed to get in on the raffle, and I won the expert built 1/10 scale Hummer. I'd always seen the 16 scale tanks, and I've always wondered, what was the appeal? You crush a soda can, you chase the dog, then what? I go to the tank battle, and I see these vehicles on the field in the village, and lightning bolts hit me. I get it. They fight what else would you do with the tanks? If you've got sailboats, you have to get 2 because they race. If you have cars, you get 2 because they race. You get battle bots, you gotta get 2 so they fight. 2 RC tanks with infrared battle systems playing laser tag was like eureka. So I met the club, I joined the club, I talked to them all day, spent both days with them. And it turned out that I went around and started buying 16 scale stuff. I buy the Sherman. A little while later, I buy a Pershing. Why? Well, you gotta have 2. You gotta fight. But of course, I didn't want to build a howitzer tank. They were, why? That's not the fun one. So I went in and looked around, and it turned out that there was a company called Backyard Armor that was selling a conversion kit to put the 76mm turret on the tank, but it was also to convert it to a Korean War tank. And I thought, well, that's all right, I can convert it back to World War II, that's not hard. So I got this giant honking resin kit. So right out of the gate, instead of building an out-of-the-box tank, I did a converted turret, I did upgrades on all the basic parts, I put recoil in it, I did all this stuff, and custom built the tool brackets and the whole shebang. So yes, I never do it the easy way. The tank that I really wanted to do right out of the gate was I wanted to do a sandbagged Sherman, the 14th armored ones that you've seen. And the mistake that I made was I started to make the sandbags out of clay, and the clay for some reason wouldn't dry. I had bought this stuff at an art store. So I got this great idea. I had heard a friend of mine had created what they called a hot box. They'd take a cardboard box, put a piece of black paper on top of it, and they put some of the stuff they were trying to dry. It was a porcelain thing. And they would let it harden before they really fired it. And I said, okay. So I put this thing outside, and what happened to my tank? It melted. The upper hull completely melted. Fortunately, that's when I discovered the Tamiya parts chain. You could buy the spare parts for the kit if you knew the part number and called their customer service. I bought a new top, and so I began my conversion. So I built this tank, and after a little second guessing, I decided to do an Expedient Jumbo from the 4th Armored. It was based on a picture that I saw on Missing Links, a modeling site. It was a tank built by Steve Zaloga. Those of you who know him, he's the famous historian who builds a lot of models. He did one that had the extra armor on it, repositioned machine guns, and some other details. And I decided that's the one I'm going to do. So that is the tank I built. The applique armor on the hull and the sides and the glasses and the turret made it unique. And I custom built a lot of stuff, and henceforth came my Expedient Jumbo. When I was done, came time to give it a name. The name I chose was Cabana Boy. Now that name it came from a story related to a personal friend of mine and the exploits on a trip to Vegas that shall remain classified. I decided to call the tank Cabana Boy because it was funny. And it has been known as Cabana Boy ever since. Now, Cabana Boy, in its first iteration, had regular Sherman electronics in it, the modified turret, and the external detail. I ran that tank for about 5 years, lovingly. Took it to TamiyaCon 06, and that's where you see it in battle with the Scat crew. I then ran it for years and years and years, and I moved on to some other vehicles. It actually became one of the first loaners in the DAC club. So there are many people who've experienced some tank battle with that tank. This tank would be very similar to Thunderbolt 7, the Creighton Abrams tank, but I chose not to do Creighton Abrams' tank because I felt that was a little grandstanding. I decided to do one similar. Over the years, it has had suspension parts replaced. It has only broken one track in 20 years. It has had a new turret added. I found another Backyard Armor turret that had a few mods to it that were better than mine. It has value gear stowage. One of the mods was to kick out the deck to make it an accurate M4A3 E8. And the plate armor was made out of acrylic, so that was a Ron Baer suggestion. It has a few interesting modifications. It has Pershing electronics, so it does have full recoil and the right sounds, and it has been through the ringer. Now, my notes say a few different things. The emitter is busted, recoil is busted, charging system is broken, traverse is an issue. This had a charging system in it, which in the end we didn't really use very much of because the tops were easy to take off. It has a replacement Shumo ventilator cover. as my attempt at doing brush guards with styrene. It had additional machine gun mounts before the Fury style, but similar. Now this one has had 2 or 3 hatches put on it. Apple receivers in the commander cupola. The loader's hatch is also a suspect. The reason that the loader's hatch breaks is that, you know, that resin isn't very thick, so too many opening and closings and it breaks. This was the first tank that had a lot of value gear stowage on the back. This is a tank where I went kind of nuts on the actual stowage. You notice I replaced the tool handles with wood. I replaced the toe tie downs with little pieces of metal and buckles and belts and a lot of these details. And the problem is this is also the learning curve tank, because those details, they all break off. All the brush guards are gone. The armor also has Somerville matting on it. This was a chicken wire kind of material welded onto bars to be able to put foliage in. I use real bolts and nuts. Those are from Hobbits. To me, they just look fun. Over the years, this tank has had a few hits and a few adjustments. So one of them was the Tamiya Traverse was so prone to sticking, I actually cut the tabs off of this tank, so it pretty much sits in here and meshes with the gear when it's attached. One of the advantages is if it gets bumped, it does kind of go back into place, but if it gets bumped too hard, it comes out. Pershing recoil in there, has a Tamiya elevation. The battle system has been modified. I put it in with the Tiger plate, like I talked about in some of the other builds. Some of the parts keep breaking off. That's a resin part. I took out the big speaker box and put it in some foam. Orange plug. Pershing electronics. And I did wire up a charging system, as you saw on the outside. However, this has been problematic over the years. As you see, every now and then a wire breaks off, and now I honestly don't remember where that goes. So I'm probably going to harvest a lot of that, clean it up. The backyard armor set also included this very large piece of resin for the underside of the engine deck. Hard to get anymore, but it was worth it at the time. We'll just plug this in quickly to see how it's functioning. That's just wires caught underneath. That's why you don't 360 it. Well, often the first step is tearing something down to build it back up. I did a little test a few minutes ago. The gun is not firing, the elevation sticks a bit, and it drives, but the turret also is a bit sticky. I'm going to redo all this. One thing to pursue is, this is the extended emitter. And it seems to have been loose. So I will do a quick test. Sometimes going through these tanks is kind of like a trip down memory lane. You remember all the stuff you learned over time. This one, for example, using thread to open the hatches, using pins to put them together, wiring all your stuff in bundles and zip tying it nicely into runs. So I appreciate all the stuff I did, but you know, it does take time to undo it. I can get the gun tube out, but I need to get the emitter out through all this wiring. And because that was one of the projects, is making a custom emitter, now you know why I have the little breakouts in a lot of them. The little teeny Dean's plugs. So you may see that added to this as I'm going to rebuild the emitter with the heat round. I think this had a heat round from a previous build, but I'm not sure. It's a good thing I have plenty. But as I see, this one has a little tape around the emitter. I think this had an older. I may have had a pop gun in this thing for many years. This seems to have been an original Tamiya emitter. Notice I also sanded off the edges of the bulb. It won't come at the back end because there's a burr here from this where the screw was put in. So in the spirit of recycling, this was the existing emitter from Cabana Boy. This was the machine gun LED that was broken that came out of Cabana Boy. And I'm feeling a little nostalgic, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this to make the new emitter. Cutting off the garbage. I got some more of these mini micro plugs from Dean's. It's a smaller version of the connector, and that way I can take the emitter out of the tank without taking the whole tank apart again. Sometimes you look extra close at these to make sure nothing is cut or bound or insulation worn off. Seems to be okay at the moment. This one, like I said, that's just a piece of brass turned into the arm that holds the barrel in place with the screw in. I'll probably replace that screw since it's worn out. When you're checking the elevation units, you make sure that it's not loose or too much slop. This pin goes into a plastic gear, so sometimes it can wear open the attachment point on the inside of the gear. This one seems to be relatively stable. I use that metal elevation arm, and here's obviously the recoil wire. I'll be restraining this, so just check this. Check your wire. Make sure everything's clean. Something I've been doing in these tanks for a while is I replace the motor leads with Dean's plugs. And I also write down the connections. I know it's fixed. The bullet plugs allow you to do some changer in between different motors more quickly. However, I just find this is an easy way to take this stuff out. Get yourself back down into the hull. And then sometimes you realize there's a few other things that are broken in here you didn't remember. The machine gun LED apparently has snapped off, so I'll have to find another bulb or replace that somehow. And traverse looks okay, but no wonder my traverse was a little wonky. It lost a screw. Might be time for a little thread lock. Down lower, this is a system that we put together to do a charging port in this tank. And over the years, this wire seems to have come loose, so I'm going to do a quick zap and see if that gets me back in business. And then connect the battery to that. Eureka, it's fixed. At this point, I take out the brains. So as you see, by putting the Deans on these motor leads, it reduces the spaghetti inside the tank from an original. I actually combine the two sets of MFU DMD power supplies into one. That eliminates the giant Y connector and reduces the spaghetti on the inside. And then you just have to deal with these. I'll leave this guy attached because there's no gain. The two servo connectors for the elevation and traverse. Check my command wire to make sure it's all intact. Now, this is an older MFU DMD set, so you can see my little plastics have started to dry out and crack. With a little bit of tenderness, I can put that back in. And then you can leave your radio attached because it'll remember as long as you don't bind it again. And I evaluate the rest of my innards. These are the bearings for the traverse, seem okay. They're not loose. The rest of my traverse seems okay. I'll undo the battery for now. We'll check out down here. I'm going to try to update this M4A3 back. Now this is one of the first ones that I did a mod to. So as you see, I had to kick the plate farther back to be similar to a correct M4A3 engine deck. I broke off the light and the brush guards, missing a brush guard. Now remember, this was an Expedient Jumbo, so this had the additional plate on it. It was actually cut often from other Shermans or even German tanks. And I'm going to try to fix this. Turns out I had a extra emitter in the wings. Trick is, I gotta drill this out of here. Seems I overdid it on the super glue the first time. As I clean out the interior a little bit, I find some interesting stuff. Here's a 30 caliber machine gun pintle. The big change in the Tamiya tank to make it something more common is this engine swap. The back of this tank has the radial engine deck. This is actually a Tamiya hull cut down to me an earlier version, but you see it's got the big ventilator for the radial engine, and it has a relatively clean lower deck, no grates, and the angle of the rear hull is pretty steep. Underneath you have the air cleaners and the double door to access. And this one I actually put a grate in. This is a later deflector grate. Switch back to the M4A3 and you'll notice the big open engine grates, the extra fuel cap, and to accommodate the larger engine, the deck is actually kicked out. Now this is a conversion I did. Unfortunately, it cracked a little bit. But the whole idea is the back of the hull needs to have that angle. So this is the big conversion I've done over the years. This engine was slightly longer. The Wright 975 was more circular, obviously. But this is a scale Ford GAA engine. This came out of a Fields of Valor 16th scale die-cast toy that I use this as an example. It's just nice to have the engine around. I'm gonna update the back end of the bus. This is the old chunk of resin that was offered by Firenick N20. I can't remember. This is either Backyard Armor or the Firenick. As we are entering the realm of Andes, this is what the real one looked like. So I'm gonna rebuild all this. This is the old one I built years ago. And just to show you the difference in the comparison, the rear plate with the deflector in place would look something like this. I know I got to replicate all this on here. I've said before, I like to use this plastic stock. This is sidewalk tile, has a couple different names. This is Evergreen. I like it because you can use it to measure and do your cuts. So for me, in all seriousness, I needed to measure something. It was that many over and that many down, and you cut it. Sand to taste. Fiscars. I've been dealing with these all my life. Improved. Not perfect, but improved. I'm gonna go do an errand. Well, the heat's on, so every time I turn the car on, it's hard to say if I can be heard over the air conditioning. I'm off to do a quick errand. I need some more paint. I need something to fill in some of those middle olive drab shades. I know it's a bad idea to take your pet into a store with you, but the Hell Kitty needs some consultation on its crew figures, so we'll go and look for that. Oh, I'm back here at the mother load. It's got the banner for the Easy 8 on the wall, bigger than life. I keep telling him that's what he needs. Yeah. T72. Why? So we can scatter the parts all over the field? It's got some interesting stuff over here. Some of my 48s. Always love to see some 48s. It's some of the stuff from our friend in Spain. That's interesting. Zippo turret. Ah, and the deal track. Interesting. A few other odd ducks. Got a C100. In the mood without the trappings.
Things that exist out there that are centuries old. And we don't have the technology to do it today. How did they do it then? And practically the same shape and design across the whole freaking world. These guys couldn't even row their boat across the lake. How did they get across the world? Right?
Well, there's a classic. Well, I got the paint. Now it's time to look around real quick. See what's next. I got my paint. It's time to head back to the ranch. See you there.